Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the south-afrifur podcast. You're listening to myself, Ivig Wolf here. Our guest this evening is Greyflank, also the writer and creator of a whole bunch of things. This is his latest work being Cold Blood, Fatal Fables, which is coming in this month, is probably already out this month, no?
Yes.
Yes. And obviously our co-host this evening is Scratch, as always.
Who else would it be?
Janice Joplin.
Oh, you got her back? Oh.
Yeah, I know, right? It's been great. Like, I mean, she's been very, very happy to join us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I didn't think she would be able to make it because, dare I say, she's been gravely ill.
She came back. She came back from the dead as well.
For a reunion tour.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
Okay.
Can we call you Flank or Gray or Gray
Gray.
or Grayful
Great. You can call me Gray.
or Grateful
Cool.
Dead?
Why are you not sharing the dress?
I don't know yet. All right, Gray. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, my furry version, which I don't play with too much anymore, is a 6-foot-tall anthropomorphic draft horse. And I created him back when I thought 6 foot tall was actually pretty tall for a creature. So I'm like 5'6", 5'7". If I had known that it was perfectly okay to have a 12-foot tall horse, I might have done that. But I chose, and I'm kind of stuck with him the way he is now. Although he is a transforming horse, he does turn into different things. I've been active in the transformer community for a long time. And by transformer, I mean TFs, not the robots. Although I'm not about turning people into robots, cutting off their limbs, replacing them with cybernetics, or attaching wheels to them, or any number of different body horror things. I also fantasy, and before, when I first started, I wrote a lot of comic books and porn stories. I wrote a lot of bad, awful porn stories using the Mad Lib style of writing. Those are all from like you can find those in rag magazines under various different names in America. And I think I stopped writing porn because someone substituted the word for a woman's vagina with my steaming donut of love. And that's when I realized it was time to quit.
Done.
Porn.
I'm out. Done.
Nice.
Yeah, not because I have any artistic integrity. It's just like, if I care enough about my words that I'm going to get upset that someone replaced whatever word I used for vagina at that time, which probably wasn't so great anyway, with steaming donut of love. I'm like, well, if I'm going to take it seriously, I should be writing something a bit more seriously. So I moved on to writing about men who lose their genitals and become women, or about people who get fur on their arms, or suddenly develop jaws and appetite for flesh. Those were all slightly above, I thought, the station of time.
Okay.
And yeah, then about that time, I started using my real name on my writing. Anything that appeared in print says Bill Keiffer on it. And I actually found myself being surprised that I didn't want to have Greyflank as a byline on names, because I've had a couple people asking me. And it's, I think Greyflank is just, I just imagine him just having sex in some place and not really having much time for writing.
Okay. All right. Okay. Well, I mean,
the dream.
that's a very quick look into how you got into writing and everything like that. So now maybe tell us a little bit about your most recent novel.
Well, Cold Blood is actually a collection of 6 stories. Most of them involve Furry noire. From what I call Aesop's world. It's a world like a lot of the furry worlds where there's no humans. And if there were humans, no one really talks about or knows quite where they went. But I use an alternate history thing where if humans existed, they're far enough in the past, maybe on a different planet. But I give hints. Like Aesop is the founder of one of the main religions on Aesop's world, where the people are fabulous, where when they meditate on fables and the morals, and they try to work accordingly. And of course, this sometimes made things like foxes to other fabulous are very down upon. And then I have another religion called Darwinist, where they actually eat their dead and perform special ceremonies. I have another religion called Zicians. They are actually like Christians. They have one God, only instead of a cross is a water wheel. And their version of Jesus was basically drowned after spinning 100 times on a cross, on a water wheel. And to them, that's why there's 100 species, because Jesus was dunked in their water 100 times. And then I have another religion that's sort of like Orthodox Judaism and Muslims, where they follow a prophet named Mosaic, and they all try to live towards his goals. And they're just allegories for religious situations, so that I could talk about the social interactions of the religions and not really come across on any side of the religions.
Okay.
Plus, I really like the idea that there's a structured way of eating other people.
Of what? Eating other people?
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's not just about cunnilingus anymore.
Oh, okay. All right.
Taking it. Don't say taking it a step too far. It's like, eating someone out quite literally, kind of thing.
Oh God.
Well, yeah. But rituals and ceremonies, but in Cold Blood, it's a big plot point in Brooklyn Blackie and on the appetizing menu. The other stories, it's less of a plot. The chromatic dragons are explored in Brooklyn Blackie and the Rainbow in the Dark, where there's the murder of a chromatic. And I basically created that religion because I definitely wanted to have dragons that I could call chromatic. And he has to solve that murder. But the rest of the noirs are half about, most of them are about Brooklyn. And two of them are not, but Brooklyn appears in one. And the last one is the sort of like a sequel to one of his earlier stories.
Okay. And when it came to the character creation of Brooklyn and pretty much all of your characters, what was your sort of thinking behind them?
For everything on Aesop's World, I like to do it allegorically. I like to talk about privilege and show how different sets have different privilege. One of the things I'm always fascinated by is when you look at the problem that minorities have, a lot of times different people within the minority can treat each other more viciously than, say, the oppressing majority will. So in this country, for example, you might have, and I'm reaching here because I can't remember the exact problems, but you might have the Dominicans, and you might have problems with Ghana. For some strange, stupid reason, they might have an absolute conflict that may affect their neighborhood for generations or any of their interactions. And it doesn't benefit anyone except for the oppressing majority, because then they're just like, see, they're animals. They're just fighting with each other. And
or
it's
in some cases, the oppressive minority.
Right. So these people should be the minorities in almost any large group should be banding together to resist or to alleviate some of the problems the oppressing majority may not even be aware that they're doing. But they just don't always do that. In the last few years, I've been happy to see Americans gather together to resist properly and to actually protest and get out and vote. But it's like we had Obama out here, and a lot of the liberals and the progressive thinkers seem to just relax with the next year, thinking, well, we've got this in the bag. No matter, we're not too thrilled with Hillary, but obviously no one's going to vote for this moron that we have. And the Trump surprised everybody.
Yeah.
The aid of a lot of gerrymandering, but still, someone wasn't really paying attention to no one was steering the rudder the way they should have been.
Yeah. Just sort of, coasting and hoping and crossing your fingers.
Yeah.
That's correct, yeah. And obviously, this guy is definitely making it his mission to undo everything Obama did.
In a very literal sense.
Yeah, and that's kind of fine too if you have better alternatives, which I'm just not seeing. But I don't want to get too far political because, especially since you guys aren't really exactly connected to our political scene, you don't have to see it on the TV all the time. At least I don't think you do.
Well, I mean, yes, I mean, like especially with myself, I tend to be very heavily connected to a lot of Twitter places where this happens quite often. So like nose to the not grindstone, nose to the nose of other
ear to the ground. Ear to the ground.
Yeah.
Ear to the ground.
No, nose to the noses, man. Come on.
Okay.
Okay.
Get with me.
And I don't want to sound like my work is very political because I was really more concerned about the social interactions. When I wrote this, Obama was president. When I first wrote the first story, Obama was president, and everything was just going forward. Maybe we weren't all in the right directions, but that's the things when you're progressive. There's 100 ways to go forward, and not all of them are the best or seem to be the best. You're conservative, it's a little easier because there's only one way to stand still. Yeah. And I don't know, since we're going backwards now, I'm not even sure conservative is the right word.
Yeah, it's alt-right. I don't know. Any case, it's so. I mean, obviously, like allegorical things aside, I mean, you use the term Aesop, for instance, and obviously Aesop's Fables is something that, or hey, they used to call it the Aesopica. That's amazing.
Yes.
So the connection, of course, between Aesop's Fables and your own sort of creation, how do you sort of make those correlations happen? Are there, in fact, any correlations, or was it just a chance name?
Oh, no, I purposely always wanted to do something with Aesop as a religion. I actually started this universe, Aesop's World, because when I first tried to get into professional comics, I had studied under Denny O'Neil from DC Comics in New York. And he seemed to like my stuff, and he seemed to be interested in what I was doing. And then he said he offered me a chance to write a backup issue, which is basically an issue, a full issue they sell on a comic book in case someone misses a deadline. And then they were able to mix in. At that point, it was Catwoman, I think, that he wanted the backup issue for. And I went home and I pounded out what I thought would be a good issue. But I also pulled out some story notes and I created a couple different, in case he really loved my stuff, my ego was used. I wanted to give him opportunities for what I wanted to do as a series. Because he wants a steady paycheck. And I showed my wife 3 of the things that I was doing. 2 of the things were standard kind of superhero things with my personal touch on it. But the third one was a serious version of Captain Carrot and an Amazing Zoo Crew, which is just a bunch of silly animals in suits playing in a funny animal world with puns and stuff like that. And I really like the idea of animals in spandex. I didn't know about Furry then. And my wife said, I don't know about this idea about having sexually active talking animals. I don't think there's a market for that. And I said, well, let me go on the internet and see. And that's when I fell down the rabbit hole. I eventually decided that I would write my own version of Captain Carrot as fan fiction, make it serious, give it the old, I forget what they call the serious version of DC Comics, Vantage or Vintage or something like that. And it begins with Vertigo, yeah. So I was going to do my own Vertigo version as fan fiction, and I built the wall. And one of the first things I said, if I'm going to do this seriously, if I'm going to have every species on Earth, that is going to create a different kind of Earth environment. That is going to create a different kind of society. And I limited myself to 100 species for just no reason other than 100 was a nice round number. And I decided that the standard religions we have wouldn't do well at all. How do you have Jesus Christ being one animal and having everyone just saying, oh, he's the savior? And then you'd have we have with all these Episcopalians jumping up and cutting themselves off from the main church. Well, we'd have every themselves off in the main church claiming Jesus Christ. So my version of Zeus is no one knows what species he is. After the wheel washed away his species, depending on how you look at it, or claimed it to 100 other species. So I just built all these story notes for all the different versions of what I thought would be a serious version of it. I wrote the story, and I put it aside for a long time. It's on fan fiction if anyone wants to go diving for it. And then I got really seriously depressed. I put everything away. And I finally found the medicine that worked. I lost my OCD urge to write, so I wasn't pounding at the keyboard all the time. And I was good. And then one day, out of the blue, someone tells me that Fred Patton is looking for me. I knew who Fred Patton was. And I'm like, okay. And I found out that Fred Patton wanted to reprint one of my stories from Metamore Keep, which was one of the transformations places that I went to. And by the time I got reached out, too late, but he said he would use me for the next story. And he basically, in his own little Fred way, reminded me that I have something that I can give to the world. So I started looking. Because of Fred, I found the Furry's Writers Guild. I started finding out that when I stopped writing Furry Fandom, there was no Furry publisher. I mean, there was Furry Nation, I think it was.
Oh, Furry Nation,
yeah. It seemed to be closing and coming, and the Slick magazine just seemed to have a lot of pictures in it and no real words, or the stories were just odd to me. They didn't make literary sense. So I never followed up on it. But suddenly there's Fur Planet, there's the Rabbit. Rabbit Valley had changed their name, I think, to something else. And then Flavor was still around. And, well, I just started writing again. And I had to learn how to write and put my tail in a chair and write. That was hard. After being compulsive about it, to do it diligently and on purpose, that was hard. So when I found I wanted to write Furry Noir, I knew I wanted to create a real world that had made sense, and I just stole everything that I made serious for Captain Carrot's Vertigo version, and I made it I took out all the superheroes, and I made it a Furry Noir kind of setting. And so it's a dark world with no superheroes, plenty of monsters hiding in the dark, and Brooklyn Blackie hasn't really encountered any of those yet. The only monsters he's encountered is sort of himself and a few other people, but all normal people, which is the furries.
Okay. So, I mean, we had a conversation about during our previous sound check, but I want to talk a bit more about like the idea of Furry Noir, particularly because, I mean, when it comes to, I think, furry writing, just on like a general note, like Furry Noir isn't necessarily the most written sort of story out there. Obviously, you'll find, Kyle Gold's books, for instance. You'll find, for instance, things like Tempo's writing, things like that. They're not necessarily what you would call noir, and I think untapped the market. But I mean, like, how exactly or why exactly noir in the first place?
Well, I picked noir because it was a random deadline that I saw on the Fur Planet submission site that I thought I could hit. The other reason was that Ocean Tigrox is just, his icon is so cute. Of course, I wanted to work with him. And I can be a little dark sometimes. I don't know if that's come off. So Noir seemed a good place to just, where I could just roll up my sleeves and dig into the dirt and just really produce something. So I took things from my life, like Brooklyn Broccoli is a bisexual. He's got daddy issues, like I do. I ramped his up about twice as much. He's a lot more sexually active than I am. And like me, he's prone to bouts of anger that is just irrational. So I tied his bouts of deep anger to justice, a sense of injustice. I gave him a backstory that he was one of the first people to find the concentration camps of the last Great War, which was what they called the World War II in that world. And the whole place was filled with dead reptiles.
Okay.
Yeah, and that was in this world. All the mammals and all the birds have like a very similar build. Like they have the swimming type, the athletic type, and the building type all look like stick figures, and only their faces and their tails, and sometimes their hands are a little bit different, but they can all shop off the same rack, more or less. Yeah, but the lizards, reptiles, reps, as I call them, they are radically different. Their arms are shorter sometimes, or their arms are longer, or they might only have 3 fingers. Their eyeballs may gush out. They may have thick tails like an otter. And there's a lot of misconceptions about them in that world. In another story, I mentioned that one of a drummer from World War II went off to war, and he came back. He was injured, tangled up in barbed wire. The barbed wire was infected. And because the surgeon saw that he was a rep, instead of letting the infection spread, he cut off the reptile's limbs, thinking they would grow back. And of course, that's not the way it works. Even in reality, maybe a tip of the tail might grow back, but people have these misconceptions.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of little dark things in the corner. So this is a good way of doing it. So I just kind of liked it, and it was a way I could do my kind of writing without throwing a lot of sex in it.
Okay. What's the sorry, I'm gonna ask something random. Is that a television show in the background, or
a what?
Is that
a television show?
Oh no, I'm my VR setting. I'm sorry. They do a training video, and even though I'm in another room with the door closed, I'm guessing it's still penetrating a bit.
Okay.
That's all right.
Yeah, this is probably a good time I can plug Control V to VR Center. We're the first ones in the United States with this, and it only lasts 3 minutes, so that should be over in just a moment.
Okay. All right.
Cool.
No, I was just curious because random talking in the background all of a sudden. Okay. So I mean, with your 6 shorter stories currently, where do you see the series going from here?
I'm going to do more stories in Aesop's world. Currently, I'm trying to write something with. You might see me on the internet referring to my alligator and my cat stories, Cecil and Jinx. They take place in modern days. It's a happy love story. I don't know how to do romance stories, so I'm just making it sort of like slices of life with a good story arc, and hopefully, because I've never written stories like that before. And in their reality, concurrently, they just had basically a president they thought was the prophet, but now they're followed by the president who's probably the Antichrist. They call him the creepy White House because in this world, when someone gets infamous or very famous, they give them a nickname so that it transcends the species. Like Teddy Roosevelt is known as the Rough Rider, Hitler in their universe is just known as the Madman, and their Donald Trump is just the Great Beast.
Okay. Huh.
And so they're dealing with a lot of different issues, including what they thought was good, organizing resistance, being community leaders. I have one guy who, Jinx, he was in the Darwinist religion, and he was he was thrown out of his religion because he really likes to feel leathers and textures and suede, and basically threw him out when they basically found him fucking the hide from his grandmother. So that's a no-no. And I probably should ask if fucking is okay to say on the radio here.
Which word?
The fucking?
No, that's perfectly fine.
Oh, he good.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's.
But yeah, and then I have another an alligator who lost his parents to an attack in New York or New Amsterdam, when the towers fell, and that's how they refer to 9/11 in their world as towers fall. He lost his parents, and because he belonged to the religion from the Middle East, he basically was prosecuted. He was a survivor of the building, or I should say persecuted. He was a survivor from the building. He was in the news for the few years for being on the bad websites, the fake news websites, for being this survivor. They labeled him as being someone who planned it, and the stress of it basically chased him out of his own religion. He quit his religion, and he stopped actively practicing it. So I have one 40-ish year old character, that's Cecil. He's the alligator, dealing with a 20-year-old cat, and they both are different people, and they're trying to live together with some misconceptions and learning. So I'm trying to play with that without making anyone kill each other, because in my first drafts they did. Apparently, every time I try to do love, I end up killing people.
So, when it comes to your characters, now, I mean, you seem to have a tight connection with the characters that you portray. How exactly do you sort of like manage that? I know that we had a writer on a while back who was Scratch. You should remember him. God damn it.
We've had many writers on here. Help us out.
Yes. Give me 2 seconds. But yeah, he spoke about the idea that like his characters sort of like always wanted to be written when he started writing, when he figured out that he actually wanted to write.
Oh yeah, I remember something like that, like having like the characters are already there, they just need someone to tell the story.
Oh yeah, like little social algorithms.
Yeah, sort of like his characters speak to him like in that respect. Like there was a feeling of the fact that yes, they themselves actually existed outside of his writing.
Oh yes, I experienced that a lot in Unbalanced Scales. Unbalanced Scales was supposed to be a brotherly love story. I wanted to do something. It was for Fragments of the Heart, which Munchcat was a great editor for. And I really liked talking to her Furry Writing Guild, and I was really excited about the template. And I was like, I never wrote a love story before, but I don't want to do a romance story. It was Fragments of the Heart touched all the different kinds of love. So let me do brotherly love. And because I really liked the plot of the jazz singer, I figure I'll do something with the jazz singer, but as brotherly love. I'll add two brothers, and I'll add a father in the background, and they're actually fighting over their father's love.
Okay.
But when and I did it as rap singers because I like the idea of because I laid directly at the feet of Dwale, D-W-A-L-E. I hope that's the way to pronounce it. He said he wanted to see a picture of a dragon with gold ropes around his neck, basically dressed up as a rap star. And instantly it popped in my head of St. George. So St. George is a 9-foot-tall bearded dragon who is a rap singer in Aesop's world. And so whenever I write him, I just imagine Dwale, what Dwale would want to look at, and that's St. George. Or Kudzu, he's sometimes called in the story because he has multiple names. But his brother, I made someone who someone has to fight for his father's love and approval, and so I sort of made Dr. Ice his opposite, and yet still a singer. And they were on tour together, so I had to contrive a way to get them being on tour together and still be competing and working together. And I'm like, well, that's not too hard with brothers because brothers are always competing. And I started typing things, and things started flowing out of my fingers. It was great. It was almost like when I had OCD and I just had to sit at the typewriter for hours. And then suddenly, Dr. Ice killed somebody. I'm like, wait, no, it's not that kind of story. So I threw out 3 pages, started over again. Dr. Ice killed somebody. What the fuck? So when I did some other things. Suddenly, someone's missing from the cast, and I knew Dr. Ice killed him. Oh, geez. Okay, so. And then I just went back to a couple of revisions and I was like basically live treating this as I'm dealing with this because I was really happy that I could just write again and pound at the keyboards. and didn't have to force myself to be sitting in the chair. But this character, Dr. Ice, just kept going. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to start this all over again. I'm going to pick a completely different character. I'm going to make a character named Frosty, and he is the brother, and he's actually just in charge of the roadies, and he's not a singer, and he's not jealous, and they're still fighting for their brother's love because St. George is doing everything his father doesn't want, yet he's still getting approval from his father. So he has that. And then suddenly Dr. Ice is killing people again. What? You're not even in this story. And then I eventually just had to let it finish. I'm like, okay, well, this work. I worked it out. I used this little device where I would have in this story, chromatics don't have a true name in the sense that we have words for names. They have images for their names, and they translate their name as based on those images. So as they get older, the verbal component changes. So I would have him meditate every morning or every prayer session on his image, and that was beautiful and it was lovely. And when I was done, I had to take that all out of the book because I had about 20,000 words of Dr. Ice killing people with Frosty wondering what the hell was going on. And I'm like, I don't have time for this beautiful stuff. So I have a word limit. And I think I still came out with like 18,000 words. And I wrote to Ocean, I know I have a limit of like 10,000 words, but I have this many words. Can I submit? And Ocean was like, yes, please submit. And then Ocean wrote back and he said, you gave my intern nightmares. Oh.
Wow.
Well, that's good, right?
Achievement unlocked?
Yes, exactly. I was so proud of that. I'm like, wow, that was much better than the first Zenkai cast ever for writing. Was the best editor I ever had on a story, by the way. I can't say this enough. He walked me through everything, him and his team. That was great. I still don't know the exact name of the intern I gave nightmares to, but I am very proud of that.
Okay. So I mean, and like obviously you're.
Oh, so does that answer your question? Is it like?
No, that answers the question perfectly. But what I
think I lost you there for a second.
No. You answered the question perfectly.
Yeah.
So what I did want to ask though is that now with obviously your influences and where you came from, obviously different places than just the furry fandom. How exactly did you? How exactly did you? Up again. Yeah, VR thinking. Okay.
Yeah, sorry. It just came in late, and they're running the training video again.
Okay. No, I mean, like, how exactly I mean, obviously you found the fandom like that, but I mean, what did you find in the fandom? What kind of people did you find? Like, how was that experience?
That was interesting because when I first entered the furry fandom, I looked at a couple of chat rooms and I found out about multiplayer games and universes, and I thought that was like the greatest thing in the world because it's all texting and there's sex in it. And I'm like, here's a chance for me to explore, different things, and your brain's your biggest sex organ, really. So texting sex, or tiny sex as it was called at the time, that's got to be okay. So I was slumming around, and my first character I created was called Charger. He was a great big horse who was kind of dumb. This way I could just sit back and listen. And almost immediately, I met my goat friend there, who turned into my first online boyfriend there. And he opened up a lot of doors to me. That was a lot of experiences. So I got to learn things. I got to learn some of the etiquette. And eventually I realized I had stopped researching, and I was just swimming along and enjoying it. I forgot about comic books. I spent my whole time compulsively writing in the furry mucks. Between Tiger Muck, I think, and the regular furry muck, and probably two others. I was jumping back and forth. Eventually, I introduced my goat friend, who doesn't want me to talk about him too much, to Greyflank, who was actually more of my personal persona. So actually a little bit more dominating than Charger was. And thanks to Furry Muck and all those other mucks, I learned that I'm more of a switch, that I'm bi, that I like things, and I really um, learned a lot. And I bring those things into my writing now. What I learned about them, what I learned, what people have opinions about, and I don't go back on the mucks now because after I kind of like after my goat friend returned to reality because he had discovered himself there. It was beautiful. He learned what he liked. He learned what he needed, but he learned he was only getting it on the internet because he was devoting so much time to his true self. He wasn't devoting any of time in reality to being his true self. So that's like where the furry fandom can be a trap, where you can just discover your true self but never do anything with it in the real world. So he left the fandom completely. He just cut himself off cold turkey. I tried to curate his furry self, as his online self, for as long as I could, but eventually he was swept away. Right now he's in England with someone. He seems to be very happy, but after he left for a while, I found somebody else, and I find I get too attached too easily, not necessarily for the right reasons, when I'm having sex with people on the internet. So I have a wife, and I love her, and I can't be spending 12 hours a day having sex with people on the internet when I don't even know what their true selves are, when someone I should be paying more attention to. And that was obviously part of the problem I had to give up when I became really depressed. But now that I found the right medication for me and I can manage my life so much better and partition things in my life, I'm still kind of avoiding that part of the sex, the sex part of Furry Online. I mean, I'm still in e621.org all the time, but I'm now not doing the tiny sex anymore, because it's just, if I want to have that kind of pretend sex, I'm going to have it with my pretend characters and maybe sell it to somebody.
Okay. I mean, it's a very interesting story, of course, and one of the more, what's the word? It's definitely one of the most honest answers we've had in a long time in respect to how we deal with things like this. So thanks for that. We definitely appreciate that kind of sort of honesty.
Did I tell you that my middle name is TMI?
Well, now we know.
Yes, I deal with the public all day, so I have to turn that button off. But as soon as I relax, that button just goes right back on.
Yeah, and thankfully, I'm not in a position where I have to talk to customers a lot, because otherwise, I'd be the weird guy behind the desk.
Yes.
I think honestly, for me, like I can sympathize in some ways, at least, particularly because I spend inordinately large amounts of time talking to students.
Yeah.
So not that it stops me from talking at all.
No, but you do have to have a filter hat on, because they're there for a reason.
Oh, it depends on the kind of filter we're talking about.
Yeah, I think you were never really good with filtering, though.
No, there's no such thing. Filters are not necessarily my favorite thing to do.
Filters are for coffee and hi-fis.
Yeah, all my friends know I don't necessarily have a filter. It's only with great effort that I can filter it out. On the bright side, I've never had a friend say, "Don't lie to me." So that's on the positive side. And of course, my wife was raised by Republican wolves. Embarrassment is still probably the number one thing that will hurt her feelings. So I've probably have hurt my wife just by embarrassing her that way a gazillion times over the years, and I'm so that she still loves me and is still with me, because embarrassment is her absolute number one dealio. And I try to be so respectful of that. But she's also learned that I have to be myself, or I'll get sick again, and I'll get depressed. And she's been understanding that me being honest with myself is telling people that yes, I'm bisexual. No, I don't have a lover currently. Yes, I did have my lovers and everything else. And I just can't be. I've tried to pretend and just put on that face for my friends or for her friends, and I've been able to do it with some great effort for her bosses. But yeah, so I write because I can be honest there, and I talk to other furries because I can be honest there. And I think it's kind of strange that the most honest thing I can say to somebody is that I'm a horse, even though I'm standing on my 2 legs and I only weigh a little bit more than 200 pounds. So I'm just fascinated by my own life sometimes, which, since I have a big ego and my ego has furs, I guess is understandable.
Okay. I mean, where to go from here?
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Wherever I go, I often leave that uncomfortable silence.
No worries. It's really not that big an issue. It's just I'm struggling to find.
Yeah, like I don't.
Yeah.
Like the topic of sort of the fandom and escapism. That's always been something that people. I wouldn't say we need to be acutely aware of, but as you said, it is difficult. You do lose yourself in that if you don't try and curate that properly. It can very much swallow you up.
Yeah, I do have partitions and I do have boundaries, although those were, I'm 50, those are like 30 years in the making. My friends who knew me when I was younger, who would play paintball with me in the mountains, who knew me from Star Trek events, who knew me from just all these different things, and they know that it's there, that I haven't grown out of it. It's just I'm better at it. When I play D&D, my character lets it all hang out. Like there was a plot point where we had to deal with a statue of Beamount, and I did, which didn't go over well, but it provoked a reaction from the people guarding the Temple of Beamount. So my friends kind of, no, I'm not afraid to go there. Not that I would ever teabag anyone in real life unless I had their permission.
Yeah, that's a yeah. I wouldn't call it a touchy subject. It's just like, if someone's defending something, then it's obviously important to them. So best not to teabag it.
Yeah.
Yeah, people have stressed that out to me a lot.
Like the fact that it has to be the fact that there has to be a reminder kind of speaks volumes.
Yeah, I mean, I grew up in the 70s. I watched a lot of 70s shows, and the influence on me was definitely, if you have a hang up about sex, it's your problem, not mine. Which of course is not the current flavor.
Yeah.
Of attitude towards sex, and of course, back in the 70s, it was rather an unsophisticated time as far as identity. Women were still learning how to be independent and liberal. Men were still trying to even comprehend that women didn't like having a place, that they were just troublemakers. And it was a good time. But I grew up watching plots about women becoming themselves or taking a step forward. So I've always been sensitive about that and tried to help. So I'd like to think that even though I can be open about sex and talk sex stuff, I just want them, it's not to belittle people or to put them down or make them feel uncomfortable. Usually people are uncomfortable. I will stop because I'm very permission biased. I just have, for some reason, I don't have everyone's, I'm just not aware of what everyone's level of uncomfortable is. And since I can't see faces the way other people do, I don't always pick up the clues.
Okay. mean, that's a very that's a very good outlook on things. I mean, it's open, it's trustworthy, everything like that. It's all the things that are supposed to be in a relationship.
Mm.
It's healthy for me, very definitely.
Yeah.
Okay, so more about your writing, and the things that you've been doing as a furry, obviously ever since you joined the fandom. Now, any cons that you've gone to where like you found people and writers that are interested in the way that you're writing, how they've influenced you, anything along that line?
Well, I like to think my writing is constantly growing. The Furry Writers Guild has been really helpful. People have been volunteering to beta read my stuff. I've been beta reading their stuff. Let's see, Dwayne has been wonderful. Rabbit, who produces a lot of books under his real name. For some reason, I'm drawing a blank at it now. But he does the midshipman David, the rabbit who is the only non-slave rabbit in the whole universe. I forget what that name of the thing of his Birkenship, David Birkenship series. He's been like an influence from forever, and he's been always supportive and always helpful. He was one of two people who told me, don't add anything to the GOAT, publish it the way, or send it to a publisher now the way it is. And I did. And I found one small publisher Weasel, who had just put out that he was looking for something that pushes the boundaries. And I don't know if you had a chance to read any excerpts from the GOAT, but there's a lot of abuse in it. BDSM, just abuse, and love, and it's a weird combination. And I sent it to him because I thought it pushed the envelope. In 4 days, he said yes. So that was an amazing boost for my ego. And he hardly changed anything. I think we corrected the spelling of words pretty much in some sentences. But generally, as a whole, the Furry Writers Guild has been great. Everyone I read has been an influence, either because I see something I should not do, or because I see something that's been done, and I just have to figure out how they did it, pick apart their craft, and do it. And then in Furry Writers Guild, we talk about what they're thinking behind the craft. And thinking about what I was writing was kind of new for me because I hadn't really done that since before I was depressed, and even after I was, because before I was depressed, I had basically OCD about writing, and I was compelled, and whatever came out of my fingers, I was just kind of happy with. I would go back in and change it if I had to, but it seemed to work for the most part. Fred Patton has been great with supporting, although he doesn't write fiction or much fiction per se. The funny thing about Fred is when you read a Fred Patton review, you can't always tell if he really likes something or not. But when he really hates something, he'll tell you. But sometimes sometimes his reviews are just like, it's just a level of what the story is about. And then at the end of his review, especially if he's doing an anthology, he might say, I like this better, or I didn't like this better, or these three stories worked for me better, and these three stories didn't work for him. And of course, probably the most constant thing he does is he will say, these are zipperbacks, they're just people, or they're just funny animals. There's no reason for these people to be in an animal story. And he's encouraged me to think that way. If these people are an animal, why are they an animal? So I've gone way to that side. And of course, now I'm kind of reversing my track sometimes when I write other short stories, because some people just want stories with furry animals just as an allegory for it. So another person who's been supporting me a lot emotionally and being supportive and saying a lot of kind words is Thurston Howell. And Thurston Howell has been really supporting. There's like not a week goes by where he doesn't like check in and just say, hi, how you doing? What are you writing? How's it going? He got a whole bunch of furries together, and he did a furry writer workshop online. and he was great there, and he said a lot of supportive things about me. Taking apart things, really thinking about the stories, and not just shooting them out of my butt and then just saying, oh, I'm at 10,000 words, I need to wrap it up. It makes me feel more like an artist. So a lot of people are I'm trying to expand in all directions and not pick a direction too much. I think probably the quietest influence on me is Mary Loud. Mary Loud writes these PG and G-rated stuff with this brilliant simplicity, and everything works, and there's no holes in it, there's no gaps in it. There's like a suggestion of something, and I'm like, do I want to write like that? It's beautiful, but can I write like that? So what I'm writing now, I'm trying to write a bit more lighter stuff. That's why Cecil and Jinx, where I'm trying to write something, because Mary Loud's really inspired me to do something lighter and to share something with people and not kill people. So that's I'm trying to write 400 pages without killing anybody. And I already had to throw out about 20 pages where I have this bad cop just shoot 2 characters I just wanted to get rid of. He just shot them. I'm like, I can't have that. That's not what this is about. That's a whole other story. You know, I do want to explore privilege, and blue privilege is probably an interesting story to explore, but I don't think I want to explore that with Jinx and Cecil. Not if I want to put them in a nice, pretty. I mean, their universe is still pretty dark. They've got a creature in the right house so twisted, no one even will mention what species he is. And of course, Cecil, his parents died, and his religion was blamed for a major terrorist attack in his country. So I'm like, that's dark enough. I don't need any more bad things. They're in love. They're going to be happy. Any other dark shit I spin off, we'll go into another story. But I still have the bad cop in there because I have him stopped on a traffic stop 2 times. And in the first time, he has to deal with the cop being patronizing. And of course, his own privilege or white privilege friend is in the front seat. It just basically yells at the cop and then reports the cop for just being a bad person during the stop and being rude. And we're trying to make an alligator put his hands behind his head when his alligator's hands don't bend that way. And then like 50 pages later, he finds out that this cop's got it on his ass and he's alone. And he's terrified because now he can tell something's wrong and he can't figure out why. Later on, when he gets home, barely survives. You know, he's like, he feels lucky to be survived, but he's like, okay, this cop had a bad day. I'm not going to think about it anymore. I'm just going to get on with my little life. And I'll never see that cop again. I can go out of my way and never drive in his town again. And then as the warm privileged friend, Jinx, says, you know, that's why I reported him. And of course, Cecil blows up because now he sees his warm privileged friend in an attempt to help him. Just didn't know how much worse he was making things.
Yeah.
Or at least that's his point of view. And he yells at Jinx in a way he hasn't yelled at anyone in years because he was terrified. And he was just going to put it away and package it and not deal with it anymore. So I think that's something that happens in real life. And I'm like, that's as dark as I want them to go. Okay. Just have him scared for his life, not to actually have a big loss like that. But I have like 100, 200 more pages to go, so I may change my mind. Or they may change my mind for me.
Okay. But I mean, like, the thing is that, like, with characters like yours and the way that everything seems to pan out, it never really works out that way. I mean, like, that's not what real life is like, and that's the reason why film noir actually interests me. At least your sort of take on it is because it's never all sunshine and roses. It's not supposed to be, if we have to think about it like that.
No, that's true. And noir is the only thing I'll write an outline for. I'm usually a pantser, but noir is, especially when there's a mystery involved, you have to hit the points of the mystery all through the books. You can't lie to the reader. And when you're pantsing, it's easy to do that. You know, it's easy to to find the Maltese Falcon, have someone realize that it's a fake, hand the Maltese Falcon back, and then you have the hero just drop the fake Maltese Falcon on the ground and find that there's $1 million in gems inside. You can do that when you're pantsing, but you can't do that when you're doing a real mystery. Mm-hmm. If you're going to have gems inside the Maltese Falcon, you have to establish that in the story somehow. You have to have that were in there when he dropped it on the ground. Because otherwise it's a cheat. I mean, it might be cute, but it's not. So those are the only. Noir is the only thing I'll write an outline for. Even when I wrote comic books, I do my page count and I would just mentally do what the arcs are, but I wouldn't necessarily know what I was planning until I got to writing those books or those.
So when it comes to comic books, actually, like, what kind of comic books have you sort of worked on then?
I worked on Tales of Tipper Gore, writing some stories in there. And Tipper Gore at the time was the wife of Al Gore, who wasn't president at the time. And she was I think he was a senator or congressman. And she was very big with trying to get labels of warnings on rock and roll albums. Yeah. Because I guess she grew up during the Satanic Panic, and now she was worried heavy metal was going to do the same thing. And basically, she got a whole bunch of senators and congressmen wives together and made the senators try to label music. And the publisher of Revolutionary Comics was actually one of those people who sells bootleg rock and roll album. He actually sold paraphernalia, and he was very, very pro. Your trademarks are nice, your copyrights are nice, but this is about getting things that people want and need, and everything. That kind of thing should be free, which I don't necessarily agree with. But he was able to take his monies that he got from selling bootleg records and stuff like that. He made his own comic book company. And he, of course, Tales of Tipper Gore, he named purposely because he hated Tipper Gore and everything she stood for, which I kind of agree with. You don't need to censor music. You don't need to put on labels. And even if you feel the need to know whether this is for kids or not, you definitely don't need to have a congressional investigation on what heavy metal means or rock and roll means. Although watching Dee Snider on C-SPAN was probably my first introduction to him without any makeup on. It's just stupid. So anyway, get back to the other things I did then. I did my full comics were, I did a couple ghosting stories for Revolutionary Comics Other Tales. I did the biography of Dan Quayle called Great Morons in History. That was a comic book. And Dan was the vice president of the first George Bush. And he was pretty much a male Sarah Palin, only in retrospect, not that bad. He was just the kind of person who would spell potato wrong and make a press conference to prove that he was right about spelling potato correctly. That kind of thing. And I did a couple others. I ghosted a couple of Star Trek stories. I don't even remember which ones. They appear in some fanzines a while back, or in a few APAs here and there for people. Then, of course, I did a few others, but those were the big ones. I did a couple of comic books for people who were building their own little companies and they never got off the ground. I did a couple of things for Alpha Productions, and they lasted a while, but they kind of folded because Marvel had taken over Diamond Distributors, and suddenly it got really, really hard to distribute independent comics when everyone wanted independent comics. And about that time, I decided I was going to take my comic book writing seriously. I went to the School of Visual Arts. I was under Denny O'Neil, and then Furry happened. After that, I wrote a lot of things for Metamer Keep. Metamer Keep was a lot of TF stories. I loved TF writing. I loved the way Men of War Keep is formulated. It's online. It still exists. People are still writing into it. Probably Phil Geese, that was the name I couldn't remember before. Phil Geese and Maddie Rat or Matthias are the great people writing Men of War Keep stories or have written Men of War Keep stories. Raven rather, was a Men of War Keep writer. I really liked her stuff for, and a whole bunch of other people. Wanderer is another TF writer. He's also sort of like a minstrel werewolf. He's not really active in the furry community, but he's just a fun guy. I really miss interacting with those people, but I want to do more than just write in Men of War Keep, and I'm trying to, because one, it's nice to know that I can reach maybe 100, 200, 300 people instead of just a couple dozen, and also because Men of War Keep's never written me a check, and I like those checks. I mean, maybe I'm a whore that way, but I really like those checks. When Fred Patton sent me a check for a story that is free on the internet, I really felt great. And also to be in the top century of Furry, the top, one of the top 100 top stories for the last 100 years, made me feel. I mean, my ego would be walking on air, except it's so huge. I can't really walk on air without hitting space. So.
Wow.
But other than that, so my writing's been a few ghost written stories here and there, a few short stories here and there, a few editorials, and probably miles of help files. I wrote a lot of help files for a learning company, whose motto was basically we only have to be a little bit better than everyone else. And then they began losing employees left and right because they had to let them go. And I don't think it ever occurred to them that you actually have to be a lot better than everyone else in science or in technology with the internet.
Yeah.
I mean,
you have to be better than the internet at least.
Yeah. I remember one time we're learning things. We're showing 15-year-old kids how to do things on a browser that reminded me of basically. Oh, what if when you have a presentation? What do you make that on? Not Photoshop, but no, not an Excel presentation with slides.
PowerPoint.
Yeah. Basically, we're doing in education that tasted like PowerPoint with quizzes built in. I'm like, look, these kids you're writing to, they're 13 years old. They're going on lines. They're going on Neopets. This is what they see right now. You have to be at least as good as Neopets to hold their attention.
Is Neopets still a thing?
Yeah, it's still around. Yeah, I just got an email about Dark Fairy quests. So yeah, apparently they're still around.
Huh. I would have never guessed. I remember I had a Neopet when I was grade.
Oh my God, they're starving. You feed them. They never die. They just starve.
I had one Neo. That was it. There was nothing more than that. I couldn't even play it on my PC at the time. So yeah, I'm assuming they're dead.
Oh my God! No, they never die. They're tormented forever, which is sexy. But still, they're tormented. What? I don't know. Eternal torment is sometimes sexy to me.
Oh.
There's a book you need to read.
Yeah.
It's called. I have no mouth and I must scream.
That's what we usually recommend when I say shit like that.
No, not quite.
I have no mouth, but I must scream.
Yeah. Also, spoiler alert for the Bible: Jesus dies.
Oh. I read that when I was 12. Not the Bible. I mean the other important one. Okay. I have no mouth, but I must scream.
Okay, because that's like the concept there is very much all about eternal torture, both psychological and physical.
Yeah. Yeah, Thurston Howell is always after me to write the sequel to The Goat because that's pretty much the condition I left the protagonist lover in, a state of constant torment.
Oh, joy.
Yes. I should say spoilers for The Goat. Yes.
Drat, now we know.
Yes.
Yeah.
But I mean, with all of this kind of writing and with all the stuff that you're currently doing, I mean, like I look, I'm finding this conversation terrifyingly interesting, in many ways. And
emphasis on terrifying.
Hey.
Emphasis on terrifying by the sound of your voice.
No, but I mean the thing is that there's a definite amount of like interesting commentary that we're definitely touching on right now, which is in very many ways very helpful to how we should be thinking about a whole bunch of things. Because I mean it's not very often that we sort of again have as open a conversation about things like this. And that's, as always, it's very, very important to me that these conversations are open, that they're worthwhile to both the person speaking as well as to our listeners. And like one of the things that I really want to sort of like touch base on is that like how do you you talk about like sort of in some ways maybe just it's not necessarily socially awkward, but the thing is that there's a way that you interact with the world that is very different from the way that other people interact with the world. And I want to know, like, how does that sort of like move into your books?
Oh, okay. Well, as an allegory, I had a vampire LARPing game, and I had a character who was a sadist, and he had a high degree of empathy. And the LARP people said, well, considering your backstory and how you behave in the game, you really shouldn't have this much empathy. And I was like, well, without empathy, how am I going to feel other people's pain and enjoy it? And they stopped and they thought about it a few months and they said, that's fine. And I'm very much like my father, except I have empathy and my father does not. My father's a little satyr. And apparently out there's like 5 or 6 other half brothers by my father with the same first name. My dad is a misogynist. He hates women. So I was very conscious of how he's behaved and what he does to other people. And I've had a series of other father figures in my life who also did not have a lot of empathy. And I very early realized that I could be like that, or I can fuel my empathy, gather the coals of it together, blow on it, and keep it burning. And even though I talk about enjoying terror and horror, I don't necessarily enjoy it outside of a controlled setting where everyone has that permission.
The idea of consent.
Yeah, and people hide their pain because they think it's ugly and they don't want other people to see it. And they think the painful part of themselves is ugliness. So you hide the ugliness or you cover it with makeup. And one of the things I've always tried to do in interactions with real people and with my characters is to let them know that they can show me their pain. They can show me what they think is ugliness. And it doesn't necessarily have to be like that, that I can grieve with you, that I can see your pain, that I will talk about it with you, not necessarily because I enjoy it, because pain shared is less.
Yeah.
And after a couple years of therapy, I accept where all the painful things in my life has come from. I understand that I'm broken a little bit and I have to work on that. And I'm not right. My heroes are broken people. And that's just as simple as it is. They all have little cracks and flaws, and it's not my job to heal them. It's just my job to maybe let things
stories known.
Yeah, make the cracks not get bigger. Maybe sand down the sharp edges so people don't get cut on them. And if I can share pain with people through my characters and let them know that other people feel this way, then that makes me feel better. And listening to my voice, listening to what I've said and how I can be rambling and off target and also my Jersey accent and everything else like that, I'm not really pleased with it. It's not what I really want to be. But when I write, I can focus on that. I can polish it. I can be the better me or the worse me sometimes. But basically, I can be a clearer version of what I want to present. And I really like that. And I just want people to know what you think is ugliness is probably just pain that will heal if you let it breathe.
That's actually a really, really nice, like, sort of way to explain it. It's,
poignant.
I'm very poignant. There's a part of the way that you're speaking right now that like I can very, very heavily not just empathize with, but also like I know exactly how that is. I mean, it reminds me of like every single conversation that I have with a student of mine, where students are literally like sort of walking up to me and going like, "Dude, it's hard out there," and I'm like, "Yeah, I know. What do you think I am the way that I am?"
Yeah, except, you know, I mean, I believe the universe is basically kind. There's a voice in the back of head when I say things like that goes, "Yeah, but what kind?" You know, and and then the answer is, of course, well, all kinds. It really is. You can. I'm no Zig Ziglar, but you really can build a better life for yourself with enough work if you build a better life for other people.
Yeah. But I mean, also, I mean, like with the noir that you're writing, it's also about that idea of the fact that you can express both sides of a complete story. That entire idea of the fact that pain exists, pretty much just to be pain, and with that kind of like sort of experience, with that kind of way of thinking, it makes you feel, or at least letting other people know that it does exist, and that there are people who will always exist within the same. Would you shut up, cat? Within that same sort of position that these and that's something that I can definitely admire about the idea. I mean, it's for me, it's kind of like it's exactly what film noir does. Actually, it's something that I could definitely see in the way that it sort of puts itself out there. It's like, you know, you've got this like old, grizzled, most of the time, or young, or whatever, sort of like either detective or person going through all of this kind of stuff, and you're reading everything from their from that experience. That, you know, it's this idea that the world is dark, it will always be dark, and it will always be out there to hurt you. But the very fact of the matter is that it shows that people can survive it. And that's something that's important for a lot of people to hear, I think, when it comes to that kind of reading.
Yeah, I think in not just reading, but in your friendships and everything else, it's like just, I mean, it's hard because sometimes sadness is chemical and not situational, which I've experienced. And then there are times when sadness and pain is actually because, well, you've been cut, motherfucker. Of course you're going to bleed, you know, but
yeah.
It's just hard to divert. You need a compass, and we're not in a world that has a North Pole emotionally. It's the compass doesn't always work right, and I don't know. Now I'm getting too deep with the allegory of that, but I should just say thank you for calling me poignant and stuff.
Look, but it is like, it really is a poignant story. It's something that we don't hear very often. It's always this sort of like flowery-esque language that we keep getting, and it's something that needs to be experienced, and people need to either read about it so that they can be wary of it, because if you're not aware of, you know, the kinds of things that are out there, and especially like weirdly enough from a younger age at times, it can become a lot more difficult. And
your head is a really shitty place to be trapped in all the time.
Yep.
Oh my God, yes. You should have seen mine.
Yeah.
But yeah, sometimes having someone from the outside speaking up about stuff like that and saying, like, making public the things that they go through, and showing them that, like, it sucks, but it happens to people. It's like,
yeah,
don't worry, we're all there. We're all listening to Linkin Park in the dark.
Yeah, I mean, in my particular case, and I know it's not the case for everybody. Being openly honest was just such a cure for things, but I still need a whole bunch of chemicals, a whole bunch of therapy to get to that point where I could work with being honest and not be ashamed. Shame is such the most stupidest emotion ever. I mean, I understand why we need it as a society, but on my day-to-day life, oh my God, no.
Yeah.
So whenever possible, I try to operate without it. And if I operate with any shame and embarrassment during my day-to-day operation, I try to smother it with a pillow or shove a cigarette in its face, because I don't need it. I don't think it does any good. And if I feel bad because I did something, do I really feel bad because I did something, or do I really feel bad because someone's mad at me, or I cut myself off from an opportunity? In which case, that's not shame. That's either guilt or realizing you were stupid. And those two emotions are much more productive than shame.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, if Game of Thrones is anything to sort of like listen to when it comes to the idea of shame,
I forgot about that.
And that's the kind of ordeal, isn't it? The very fact that shame pulls you out into the city, into the city center, walks you down the street, and blames you for absolutely every single mistake that you've made, and doesn't progress you in any way. There is no correction. It's just shame.
Yeah.
No, but then again, that church was kind of corrupt in its own way. So she was kind of right to resist. I mean, that was like not even her religious base, or even the religious base that she thought herself as being in front of. This was just obscure sect for her. But yeah, you're right. I mean, it didn't have any impact on her, because except to harden her, it made her bloodthirsty. It hardened her even to a point where it's a lot of character development, because she was saying it was transactional for her. She's like Trump.
Yeah.
But it also affected her because it made her, I'll kill everybody. I don't care what you say. I have these tools. You gave me a reason. And, I don't care if you're marrying the princess from North Korea. I'm going to blow everything up. God, I made it about Trump. Sorry.
No worries. It happens more often than you think.
Yeah, it's just it's invasive though, right? It's like it's like a constant looming. I wouldn't call it threat, just like fuck, man.
Yeah.
No, it's like you're going out to dinner. You've gone out to dinner every night with this family, and then one day there's this guy Damocles at the table, and there's this sword hovering over his head. And you're like, well, fuck, but okay. And then every day with Trump, it's like you come into the same place to have food, and now there's more swords over everyone's fucking head. And until finally you're like, hey, why is there even a sword over the turkey and cold? Why? We don't need all these. Something bad is going to happen, even if you think you know how to handle a police system. Just now, it's just ridiculous. Whatever reason there was even a sword over Damocles' head, to have it over everyone's head now.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I'm going to start hitting my head against the table. It just...
No.
Yeah. Okay, let's get off that. And actually, we're getting onto the point where we need to start wrapping up. It's like it's been an hour and 20 minutes. So,
you guys are really great to talk to. Thank you.
Yeah.
Hey? So I didn't catch that.
Yes. Also, you guys have been really great to talk to. Although I've actually been before I even listened to you guys. I was fascinated by Scratch's picture that you always have on him.
Yeah.
Yeah, that slightly terrifying look is. Well, I think it's sexy. I just don't know.
Like, I genuinely have no idea of why I made that. Like, why I drew that. It's just... it's just a thing that popped into my head, and I was like, this is going to look funny.
Sure.
It does.
And
well, yeah, but
you've been using it for how long now, Scratch?
Yeah, like years. I should update it at some point, though. Just maybe put something else there. Don't know what. Any
well, you should go the opposite end and do something like super realistic.
Oh God. I haven't. I just need to put some more time into drawing it. It's been years. It has been years.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it has been years, like literal years. Scratch.
Yes. I know. Okay.
Yeah. If you want.
Fuck you.
I want to plug here for my favorite cover artist ever. Also from South Africa, and he did the icon that you guys have been tweeting about, the gray-faced Greyflank with the beard, which apparently horses do have sometimes.
So scientifically accurate.
Yes. He forgot to do actual research on that, so that's kind of cool.
Nice.
Yeah.
Who's the artist though?
It's Virgacht. What?
Ryan.
I'm never sure if I pronounce it correctly. Whenever I hear, oh, do I have it wrong? He's in chat actually, and yeah. How do you say it?
I've been saying Vergach, but it could be Verkik for all I know.
I say it as Virgacht.
Oh, that sounds sweet.
Dutch,
I don't know what
it's the Dutch.
Okay. It's VIER is feed, and then GACHT would be Hacht. The only person who could tell us is him, and I'm hoping he's listening. But yeah, so that's your artist spelled VIER.
I've been communicating since I first got. I mean, when I had the goat accepted by Weasel, the first thing I did was I know who I want for a cover, and I hadn't spoken to Vergach in like almost a decade, and I didn't know where he was. He had moved. He had originally been from Maryland, and he had moved from there to South Africa, and I couldn't find anything current with his name. So I basically stalked him on the internet for like 16, 24 hours. I found him, wrote to him, and he was like, "Oh, you picked a good time. I'm just taking new commissions." So I was really thrilled. And his rate was something that Weasel could afford. He liked his stuff, and I was really, really super happy with the cover I got. And I was really, really happy when Jaffa agreed to have him be the cover on the second guy. And if I keep doing books, I'm going to keep asking him to be the cover artist. It's just I like to think my stuff is a little bit different than the average furry stuff, and I think that Vergach's stuff is so different from what other furry cover artists are. So, like, I'm ready to trademark him. I'm
bring him into the light.
I don't want to the way that the word cocky was recently trademarked in over America. I don't know if you guys are aware of that.
No.
It was trademarked?
That's dumb.
Yeah. This romance writer, I guess she has a series, and it was like the Cocky Cowboy. And sometimes you have a series, and you can show to the Patent Trademark Office that you have a serious enough interest in protecting a series of books. You can trademark a title, because normally you really can't trademark a title of a book or a story, but you can trademark a series or any other commercial property, but you have to protect that trademark. Now, part of her application was asking for a trademark on the actual word cocky, and the trademark office granted her this trademark based on totally for reasons I can't comprehend, but I guess hello, welcome to Trump. They they allowed her to do a common usage word like cocky, and she has a trademark on all the word cocky as a title in a romance series. So, of course, since she has to legally, there's no trademark police, so she immediately started asking Amazon to block other books that use the word cocky in their title or advertising. So she basically, there's a big controversy because that's not supposed to work. Like, if you wrote a book and you called it Star Wars, you can still do that legally, I should think, but it can't be about two robots, and it definitely can't be science fiction. And you might want to just say, you know, and put a subtitle underneath it to differentiate it. But if you really want to be careful, because you could still be sued for any reason. You don't necessarily have to have a good reason for it to be sued. So you might want to pick another title. But there's 100 books and 100 short stories out there as the tree grows, or as a limb twisted the limb grows, that kind of thing. But yeah, so I don't know how she did it or who she blew to get it, or if she had to blow anyone at all. But she got the actual word cocky copyrighted, and she's able to get cease and desist orders for anyone who did a romance novel with the word cocky in it or in its advertising.
Wow.
And Amazon's been responding to that.
What the hell, man?
Really weird.
Yeah, which makes me wonder if maybe I should trademark the word furry while I still can. No, I don't want to cause that much pain to that many people.
Yeah, you're gonna get in trouble. If ever there is a setup for someone being beaten to death with a bad dragon horsecock, that would be it.
Well, yeah, I would think. Wait, what would I get beaten with? Wait, what would I be beaten with? Because I might reconsider.
something from Bad Dragon, one of the heftier ones.
You know what? If you like it so much, it won't be one of those.
I'll let either To the Griffin or Seeb do that. It seems like something they'd enjoy.
Yeah, well, yeah. We'll see if they do.
Furry, not.
Yeah, not get beaten to death. Yeah, I don't know. It's in all honesty, it's too broad. Let's hope. Yeah, let's hope the patent office is a little bit smarter than that.
I think so, but I'm sure they get a lot of trademarks and stuff like that. And someone just said, "What the fuck?" Boom, 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 boom. Or maybe someone's just never used. Maybe cocky is just not part of their vocabulary. Maybe they've never heard the word before. Maybe no one's ever accused them of being cocky, or maybe they've never heard anyone being accused of cocky.
Or maybe they've never seen Star Wars.
Yeah. So maybe it was just maybe something. So I know there's already a lawsuit to have the trademark revoked, and I know people are going through extra efforts to get the Amazon to put their titles back on. But obviously, it's much cheaper and easier to change the title of your book, especially if you're a self-publisher, because it's going to be a year or two before the trademark courts. They're backed up as any other court in America.
Yeah.
So going through them is just going to be forever. So luckily, there's a lawyer. I forget his name. I think it was Henry something. He came out of retirement, and he said, "Well, I can't rest while someone's trademarked a comment uses word. I just fuck it." He comes out of retirement. So basically, he is the romance writer's boozy badger now. He just totally came out of retirement. He's just championing romance writers, and he just said, you shall not pass, or get back here," something like that.
Nice.
Yeah, well, someone has to take back the, you can't. It's dumb. How do you? Whatever. I fucking care.
I don't know. I guess someone just thought cocky was not a common use word at the time, or maybe she tried to trademark a whole bunch of words from cocky to cowboy, and they're like, "No, I'll let you have cocky, but I can't let you have cowboy."
Yeah. Because there was many cowboy novels already.
Yes.
Yeah. And I'm sure there are romance novels that had cocky in their books before, but that's just it. If you have cocky in an earlier generation in a title, it probably wasn't a romance book per se. It was probably more in the lines of an erotic novel, if anyone had it in anything or close. And the erotic line is not necessarily the same as the romance line.
But are they legally distinct? That's the question.
Well, my understanding is that that the trademark is limited to romance novels, and Amazon is very, very good about categorizing books. And if something's erotic and not a romance book or close to pornography, they probably are diligent about making sure it's not listed that way.
Okay, fair point.
Probably, but not necessarily.
Okay, so we are very steadily approaching the end of the show. Is there anything you would like to plug? Any more publications coming out? Short stories?
Yeah.
Where can we find you? What's happening? Tell us.
Pencil and Jinx are coming out in excerpts of my novel. Excuse me. They're going to be out in Raw 9, which is going to be a resistance story for Raw, where they are arguing about how they should spend their time protesting things. And that Cecil wants to be just stick with what he's been doing for the last 30 years. And Jinx, who witnessed the bad cop treating him badly for being a rep, wants him to expand into Cold Lives Matter. So that's that part. And in Fang 9, I deal with Jinx's kinks. So Fang is obviously a much more erotic take. So I am stretching my legs and doing nice erotica with them as they explore his kinks and for him dealing with how he got kicked out of his religion.
Okay. All right, so it's Raw and what's the other one? Sorry?
Fang. F-A-N-G, in case my accent is all messed up.
Okay. No worries. I just sort of spaced there for a minute. And Cold. You're saying something about the other book, the novel that's out?
That is the collection that's out now. It is available from Jaffa Books. You can see it by its werewolf-like protagonist, Brooklyn Blackie, on the cover against a blood splash background. So there's a lot of blood and death in that book. For those people who don't want erotica, in the noir, I do have to say there's two kind of sex scenes in there. One is a public display of fellatio, and another one is basically a fake. So people who have those kinds of triggers probably should avoid it. It's a very nice story of a guy who goes around killing people for justice, and he's trying to himself.
Vigilantism, yay!
Woo! Yeah. Although most of the stories don't involve him actively being a vigilante, it's just him bemoaning his fate with how his various lovers aren't working out. He wants a relationship with them, and mostly he's been acting with trade. He's been doing a lot of trade, I should say.
All right. Okay, but you know what? Thanks a lot. We really did appreciate this very interesting conversation. And yeah, best of luck to you and the rest of your work. And I hope to talk to you again soon.
I hope so too. Thank you, Ivek. Thank you, Scratch, for the exposure. I really appreciate it.
Yeah.
Although I usually exposure in a different sense, but this is great too.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Cool.
You guys have a.
Yeah, you have a good evening too, man. Thanks again for coming on. And I think we're probably going to be playing music after this, right?
That's correct.
Okay, cool.
Yay, music.
Yes. All metal all the time.
Yeah. Thanks again for listening, everybody. Have a good evening, and we shall see you again next week.
Cheers, guys. Well, not next week.
Not next week?
Not next week. No.
Okay, cool. Week after that.
Yeah,
then.
no, yeah, we're taking a break for this week. I have to go see my dad on the weekend of the Friday, of the Saturday, of the Sunday, of the 1st to the 3rd.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
All those words. All right.
Mm-hmm.
Well, see you guys after that then.
Yeah.
Cheers, everybody.
Alrighty, guys. Cheers out.
Bye.
Cheers.